Good evening. I would like to welcome all members and guests to the Old Town Hall in Stratford for this meeting of the Council. Members unable to join us physically at this location are able to join remotely. However, they will not be able to vote and their attendance won't be officially recorded, although their virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. I would like to welcome the members of the public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. With regards to the meeting etiquette, members of council, please can I ask that you indicate that you wish to speak by raising your physical hand or by using the hand up symbol on the Zoom dashboard. Please can everyone physically present continue to wear their face masks until they're invited to speak. After you have finished speaking, please replace your mask. We have maintained social distance at 1.5 meters, and can members be aware that windows are open to maintain good ventilation. There are speakers throughout the room to help with the increased background noise. A hearing loop has also been installed for tonight. If you are invited to speak, please use the microphones if one has been invited for, or walk to the nearest microphone stand situated on the left and right hand side of the room. Please can I ask members and officers to introduce themselves when speaking, not to touch the microphone, but to stand close when talking into it. Be mindful of social distancing requirements during and after the meeting, and also to scan to locations QR codes for track and trace. I would like to ask that everyone turns their mobile phones to silent mode, and those who are watching from home via Zoom to mute yourselves on your device. We're not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please remain calm and follow the instructions of the town hall staff. Moving to item 1 on the agenda. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies for absence from this evening's meeting from councillors Jennifer Bailey, Daniel Blaney, Steve Brayshaw, Sasha Dasgupta, Mariam Dewu, Joshua Garfield, Nilufa Jahan. Sorry? Was someone want to? Oh, sorry, okay. Nilufa Jahan, Pushna McWarner, Susan Masters, Anthony McAlmont, Pat Murphy, Farah Mzair, Feroza Nikiwala, Narissa Osei, Salam Patel, Tamina Rahman, Delphine Tahura, Rachel Tripp, and Tony Wilson. Are there any more? Council of House, do you have any more? Right, there we are. Don't touch it. Maniba Khan. Mundaz Khan. Yes, of course. Yeah, okay. Charlie McLean, also apologies for her.
Yeah, apologies for me, Chair. Although you can see me, I'm not in the room. Thank you.
I see. Okay, okay. Are there any other apologies for absence from councillors to be recorded? Thank you very much. Item 2, the agenda. Are there any members wishing to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or personal or prejudicial interests they may have in any matter which is to be considered at this meeting? Item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the last meeting. I move as a correct record the minutes of the last ordinary meeting of the council held on the 21st of June 2021, which was set separately as a supplementary. Do I have a seconder, please? Well, I see Jane Lawfels, Councillor Lawfels first, okay? Thank you very much for that. Is that agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Item 4 on the agenda. As members are aware, in the spirit of more openness and inclusion at council meetings, partner updates has been included as a standing item on council agendas. I am delighted to welcome to the meeting Lib Peck, Director of the Mayor of London's Violence Reduction Unit, which was established in 2019 to tackle violence in our city with a key focus on prevention. She was previously the leader of Lambeth Council, during which she supported a public health approach towards violence and pioneered the council's work on preventing violence against women and girls. We are delighted that she's able to join us today to share her experience. May I remind members of the public, as identified in the order paper, there is no provision for members of the public to speak on this item. Lib, you have up to 10 minutes, after which there is up to 10 minutes for any member questions and answers. Lib is joining us on Zoom. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much to the Mayor of Newham for inviting me today to talk about the work of the unit, and also, of course, to draw out the excellent partnership that we've got with Newham and all the work that you're doing in this space. It's really good to be able to come along, because I did attend in my early capacity as the director of the London Violence Reduction Unit one of your meetings, which was the report back of your Youth Safety Commission, and so it's really interesting to hear how that work has developed. But it's also, for me, I think today really important, because I've spent the afternoon in City Hall and been alongside the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, as he met one of the bereaved parents. Their child, unfortunately, murdered back in 2020, in a different part of London. But I always find those experiences incredibly moving, and through that and watching that pain and that anguish of that parent and listening to her talk about her son, I think it has to provide the kind of motivation for the work that we're all trying to do. And I'm sure as councillors you will all have sadly had similar experiences where you've gone and met bereaved parents, and there is something unique, I think, about the ability of those parents to turn that pain and that anguish into something positive, a real campaigning zeal I heard today. And I've seen other examples across London where people have turned that pain into trying to do something for other young people. So there's definitely something, I think, that both underlines to me how important the work that we're all doing is, but also how important that we can turn what is very often huge tragedies into something that is much more inspiring. And I think we have to hold on to that belief that together we can make a difference, and that violence isn't inevitable, and it is our job to challenge that by bringing all different parts of society together, working together to make sure that we have a much safer London. It was certainly, that was the motivation for the establishment of the Violence Reduction Unit a few years ago now. The Mayor of London had seen an increase in both the feelings of insecurity and people not feeling safe in their space, but also a consistent increase in some of the indicators we use to measure violence, both in terms of violence threatened, but also in violence used, and very sadly in homicide cases. Hello, can you not hear me? Sorry. Hello, Roxana, can you not hear me?
Yeah. She's in with the Mayor at
the moment. Okay, no problem, no problem. Okay, cheers.
So I think if we just take a few minutes just to try and sort out that feed loop that we had.
Make an announcement to those who feel on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we'll do is I think what we should just say in the room, we're just going to have a short recess and sort out our IT issues for this 5 minutes. Okay, so everyone knows where we are.
Everybody here? Thank you very much indeed. Could you bear with us at the moment, please? As you can see, we're having IT issues. So while they're trying to sort them out over there in the technical department, if you can bear with us for about 5 minutes, please, if you don't mind. Thank you.
I'm not sure. The audio guys want to try it again. They think it's fine. Yeah, they've got, yeah. So shall I try again? Okay, so people at home are able to hear me. Okay, so could I possibly ask Councillor McLean just to say a few words, and we're just going to test if we have that loop that we had on earlier.
Hi, I could sing you a song if you want. No, not really. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant.
You can hear us.
Yep.
Okay. We ready to restart? Okay, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Lib, we're so sorry.
Okay, no problem. Can you hear me now?
I think we can.
Yep.
Just 1 minute, please, if you don't mind.
Okay. No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, the mayor would like to say something.
We're just going to see. I think there might be like a 20-second or 30-second delay. Yeah. The loop is still working. We still have a loop, so we've still got technical issues. So apologies and just bear with us, please.
Okay. Can I update you on where we are at the moment? We're going to pause the meeting for 15 minutes and then see if we can get the problem sorted out, and hopefully it would be done, and we resume the meeting after 15 minutes. Thank you very much indeed. Bye. Gentlemen at the back. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. We've taken the decision at this time. Okay. Thank you. All here. All right, and then just take some instructions. Have to hold the videos. Yes, I know. The Excel is not available. So yes, it's a few. Okay. So do you want me to? Because I can remember these difficulties that you last one. No. Okay.
Still trying to sort it.
This has never happened before, nothing.
You have to do a double act. They need access to certain features of our campaign. They can't switch, they need to meet the requirement of certain price, so you just have to go once.
It's not coming back into me.
We're just gonna do a test. So could I kindly ask Councillor McLean, unfortunately you've drawn the short straw, just to unmute yourself and see if we can actually hear you again.
Luckily, Adrian, I am still sitting in front of my computer. Can you hear me? You can't hear me, can you? Obviously not.
I can see you shaking your head, and you are right, we can't hear you. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, Charlene, do you want to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Okay, so we're just waiting if there's a feedback loop. So you were clear,
Good.
but after about 20 seconds, we hear you again, but that's what we're testing now.
Okay. 2 for the price of 1, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. We may have solved the issue. Are we okay? We think we've solved it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So can we bring back, so could I ask those wanting to be on camera just to turn their camera back on? So you appear in Zoom. Thank you. Okay, so I'm looking at the audio team. I'm asking, you think we're okay? All right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor McLean.
Okay, could we call the meeting back to order, please? I think the problems seem to have been sorted out. Okay, which then takes us back to item 4 on the agenda. And Libby, we're sorry about that, but these things do happen. So would you like to continue, please? If you want to start from the beginning, you may do so.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, not a problem. Thank you very much. I'm assuming people can hear me okay. Yes, good. Okay, well, I will begin again. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me along to Newham today. As you may have heard, but you may not have heard, I very early on in my job at City Hall, I came along to the findings of the Newham Youth Safety Commission, and I was very inspired then, and it's great to be able to come back actually and listen and hear about a lot of the work that you are doing. It's also particularly good to have come along today, because this afternoon I was in City Hall and unfortunately meeting a parent who had lost her son, who'd been murdered. And I always think, listening, which I sadly have done too many times, to the pain and anguish of a parent who has lost a child, which I'm sure you as counsellors will have done as well, provides a huge amount of reflection, but primarily motivation as to why we absolutely need to be doing all we can to tackle violence. And very often you find, in this particular case, the woman had used her pain to sort of turn into campaigning zeal. In other kind of scenarios, I've definitely met many parents who have used that pain to try and bring into place something that really provides positive opportunities for young people. And I think this whole sense of shared shared endeavour by all of us. The fact that we can all make a difference really is something that we've got to absolutely got to hold on to. And I know that that's an approach that Newham has been taking. That was very much the context in which we were set up as a unit 2 and a bit years ago. Unfortunately, the backdrop to Sadiq Khan announcing the establishment of the Violence Reduction Unit was that the picture of violence had been at that stage growing and had reached in 2019 a real high level of homicides, 150 across the capital. That had been the worst that had been seen for some time. And it was really making sure that from that we tried to do something different and that we tried to do something much more positive. Rather than perhaps looking at the year on year, it was really an attempt to try and get at the long-term causes, to really change the long-term experience and really work out how we could have a long-term impact, what actually works. And we were fortunate, as I'm sure many of you will know, to be able to look at what had been going on in Scotland for over a decade, where they'd adopted a public health approach, really rebalanced their efforts to look at how you do prevention as opposed to just enforcement, that had brought around some fairly dramatic reductions in the level of violence there. So that was, in a sense, the kind of context in which we were established. And that context hasn't gone away. There is no quick fix to this, but I do genuinely believe we also need to be making an impact in the short term as well as just looking at the longer term and making the case for prevention. The statistics today, particularly as we speak at the moment, are pretty complicated. The trend over the last 18 months has been that we're beginning to see a decrease in violence, but certainly that has not had enough of an impact on people feeling safer. And that is probably because over the last few months, we've really seen some shocking incidents of violence. And we've seen the number of homicides not go up, but the proportion of young people, sadly, that have been killed increasing. So while we are about long-term, we are about prevention, and we are about changing the culture, which is a long-term thing. I think the public expects, demands, and we need to be responding to some of the incredibly difficult short-term challenges we've got. Now, we adopted an approach which is very, very similar to the Newham approach, which is a young person-centric one. I noticed that you have declared Newham's Year of the Young Person this year, which is putting young people right at the centre of framing up solutions, interventions, and making sure that they're given the sort of support and confidence and ambition and opportunity that you can provide. And in doing so, you've really framed up something positively, moved away from too much language around victim and perpetrator and tried to look at that through the context of a young person's journey. And central to that is very much this idea of relationships. You know, what are the relationships that are supporting a young person? And that is very similar to the way we have approached things at the Violence Reduction Unit. So we've looked at what we've got at our disposal. Yes, we've got money and we've tried to invest that and support some of the initiatives that are going on in boroughs across London, including, of course, and central to us, Newham. But we've also looked at the importance around partnerships. And again, working with the borough, but also working very closely with young people and very closely with communities, and making sure that through all of that experience, we are articulating change, policy change, and trying to tease out that magic, what works, what is that kind of golden thread that runs through, both sometimes because of place, but sometimes actually because generally programmes and approaches are working across London. We looked at a young person and started to think about what were the key points in their life where they might be most vulnerable, but also could be the opportunity to really influence their later outcomes. And so starting with a whole family approach, we've invested in parental support. And I know we've got some money coming into Newham to try and do that, develop and amplify that parental experience, look at that relationship, what do parents need, what do parents want. It's a really important part of developing a preventative approach. We've looked at, the educational experience of young people, and I'd be really interested to hear your experience in Newham around that. We know that there is a very close relationship between, or correlation between exclusions and kids that are alienated from mainstream school and then end up either being affected or perpetrating violence. And so we've really tried to look at how we can strengthen that move from primary to secondary school. And we've got a programme called Stepping Stones doing some of that, but also how do we build that resilience? How do we build that compassion in a mainstream school when there's so many other demands coming at teachers? But that means that exclusion is not perhaps such a well-used tool. And then, if we're trying to change that long term, how do we make sure in the short term we're providing extra support to alternative education and provision? So we have a whole range of activities that we're trying to support around education, and we are really looking afresh at that. And I know you've got some fantastic programs here as well, so it'd be really interesting to see. One of the things that you as a borough have prioritised is very similar to what the Violence Reduction Unit has really honed in on as well, and that is the very often neglected profession of youth workers, and how can we both add more support to those youth practitioners who are at that absolutely key relationship with young people, and provide that sort of long-term trusted adult relationship that often makes a critical difference. And we have been funding a youth leadership programme, of which I know a handful of youth workers from Newham attended this year, and I know that really kind of resonates with your huge increase in the number of youth practitioners that you've brought into the borough. So building on that resilience for young people, building on those close relationships and thinking about the setting in which that happens is fundamental to the approach that we've done. But I mean, place is everything. I was interested to read that you have the highest number of young people across London. I think it was 90,000. And you will have, in your neighbourhoods, very, very different opportunities for young people. And that was so different even within your borough, but also, of course, to any of the other 31 boroughs that there are across London. And so we work very closely with the local council. We've been developing a violence and vulnerability plan, which is a partnership approach, but we also try and fund some of the really interesting work that you are doing. And I was particularly attracted by the adolescent exploitation work that you're doing, really looking at the vulnerabilities of young people and how you can support them.
If I can interrupt, but we have 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. So there's a whole range of a whole range of partnerships around the person and around the place. It would be negligent of me not to mention the importance of neighbourhood, which I was just coming on to, and the fact that we are delighted that a consortia of community organisations led by Fight for Peace, but I know with the support of the local council, were one of the 8 successful bids that we funded a 2-year programme for very grassroots intervention along the Barking Road, and to really think about what might make a difference for a young person. But if there's support around people and there's support around place, I think it's absolutely fundamental that we also realise that some of our structures and some of our organisations do an awful lot to embed inequality, an awful lot to embed discrimination, and that we all have a responsibility to be tackling that. And I know, again, you've done some really interesting work in Newham about trying to make sure that you are really encouraging Black leadership, but you are in turn really examining your own organisation and examining your partners as well. And that's certainly something that the Mayor is leading on at City Hall as well. So those are the kind of 3 areas we've taken. We've really looked at the investment and trialling what works. We work closely with the Youth Endowment Fund, as I know you do as well, to really get under the skin of what problems are and how we can support the best kind of programmes and initiatives for young people. But absolutely central is place, and that's where you as a local authority, I think, are absolutely in the driving seat. And I'm sorry?
Yeah, could you pause there, please? Because
oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Do you want me to finish the sentence or no?
You can finish the sentence.
Okay, thank you.
Move on to questions.
Okay, thank you. I was about to wind up. So I was then going to say, actually, that so that for us, and that place and that role and relationship with the local authority has been absolutely key, and will continue to be, because we sit in City Hall, we go out and we meet with community groups, and we go out and meet with young people, but quite clearly you are on the ground, and you, along with the VCS within your organisations, are the ones that are absolutely delivering. So it's great to be here, and it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Does any member have a question? Can't see any hands. What's going on here? Oh yes, Councillor Ali.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Ali Cameron here. I'd love to hear your excellent contribution here, and thank you very much for the excellent work that you're doing here. You mentioned the various starts in terms of the culture change, the demographic, and the profile, etc. Can I ask you from my perspective, acknowledging the excellent work that you're doing here, I know that you're cascading on the boroughs, what do you think are, you mentioned the golden thread, what are the key aspects which ensure consistency across London's 32 boroughs plus City London as a whole? Because crime varies, the nature, disparity of the standard minus etc. is different for boroughs. So how do you ensure consistency across the 32 boroughs?
Libby? Lib, sorry. Did you hear the question?
I'm afraid I couldn't hear any of the question. No, I'm sorry about that.
Oh dear. I wonder if we can try again. Yeah. Just a couple of words to see if she can hear you, Councillor Ali.
Let me take the mask off, hopefully that's better. My question really is, you mentioned different strands of
yeah. Councillor Ali.
How do you ensure?
Councillor Ali, just 1 minute. Let's see if she can hear you, okay?
Not very well, I'm afraid. I think you're going to have to act as a bit of an intermediary, if that's okay, because I can hear the beginning part, but I can't really hear very well at all the proper question. No.
Yeah. Go to another mic if you don't mind, Sifis.
Thank you very much, Lib, and I'll be very brief again. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Right, my question was, I'll keep it very simple now. You mentioned various trends in terms of the violence, you know, the ranges, the various boroughs, etc. How do you, as the London Mayor's, you know, the unit of reduction, actually ensure there's going to be consistency, and what are the key parameters that you're going to be managing or assessing in a couple of years' time? Hope that makes sense.
Would you like to answer that?
Yes, I'll have a go. Thank you very much. I did hear that. So I suppose there's two things that, there's a couple of points I would want to make. First of all is we are about what works. I mean, that is absolutely key. And that is certainly the approach that was adopted up in Scotland. It's integral to public health approach. We need to be learning from data, using our evidence. I didn't have time to dwell much on the research programme we've got, or to talk very much about the evaluation methods we're using at the moment, but they are central to how we are working. And I know that they play a similarly kind of key role in Newham and its developing kind of strategies. So that's number one, and that's important. The second one is, I think we do keep needing to remember what works in places, and not just assume that there is a uniform solution to all of London. I'm a real advocate and believer in local government and the role that it plays, and I really do think there is a difference between the 32 boroughs. So I would never want to be in the position of just standardising things. That said, there is an awful lot that can be learnt from borough to borough. The plan that I referred to, the violence and vulnerability plan that your officers will have been involved in, and partnerships through the CSP, and I'm sure through the fantastic work of Geeta, will have been engaged in, is being able to show what Newham is doing so that Lambeth, for example, can learn. And we've had some really interesting sessions of officers from all over the 32 boroughs coming together, picking out a strand and working out what is best practice, for example, in a school setting, what is best practice around data sharing, and how can we strengthen our understanding of what's going on around London. So that's the benefit of my role. I can see that pan-London approach. I can try and facilitate those sessions so that people are sharing good practice, and also making sure that all of the individual programs and research is very, very data-led, and that's certainly what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other member? Well, thank you very much. Oh, so sorry, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liv. Sarah Ruiz, Cabinet Lead for Children's Social Care and Education. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. So, as you rightly recognised, we have really invested in our youth services over the last 2 years. We have singularly established a youth safety board, our adolescence exploitation strategy. So we have all of our building blocks in place, and yet just this weekend we had 3 incidences of harm to our young people, and I just wondered what more can we do, because it doesn't appear to matter that no matter how much we invest and the time that we spend trying to keep our young people safe, the argument always comes back is that there's not enough police on the streets. And I just would like you to comment, really. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much for the question, and also highlighting all of the work that you've done across Newham, as indeed I tried to do, to really put young people centre stage. And I know that's about listening to young people and working with them and co-producing solutions, and that's something we take very seriously at the unit as well. I mean, I don't think there is any magic solution, I'm afraid. I do think a lot of this is keeping positive, is keeping determined, and is keeping going and learning alongside what works. And that is certainly the experience of other places which have introduced a public health approach. This isn't a quick sprint. This, unfortunately, is a long-term thing. That if we're really going to shift the culture, then you're looking at programs being embedded for a long period of time. So I do think there is something about holding on to an approach, a determination of approach, and making sure that we keep teasing out absolutely what works. We keep making an impact absolutely in the short term, but we realise it's a longer term thing. And I think there is something about how we measure and how we articulate prevention. I mean, we did a report when about a year after we were established, looking which highlighted the costs of violence in London. And in 2019, it was estimated that the cost of violence to Londoners was £3 billion. That was like looking at the measures put in place to try and ensure against violence. It was looking at what immediately happened as an incident when an incident occurred, and then it was looking at how you try and address that. And I think how you address all of that trauma is hugely important, and something I would have focused on if I'd had a bit more time. But what that speaks to me is, that is an enormous amount of money being spent in effect on failure, and we need only a small amount to be able to reinvest in prevention. And we've had a decade of austerity impacting some of those very vital public services. So it's not surprising that we can't affect change rapidly, but I don't think that should interfere with our determination to make change over a longer term. I hope that kind of gets somewhere to, I think, the philosophy that we need, but also the kind of points that we need to be articulating. And I suppose the third bit I would want to finish on, which kind of connects to the earlier point as well, is just around evaluation, that we need to constantly be talking to young people. There's evaluation through statistics and finding out what works, which is important, but we do need to be listening to young people and how they feel safer, and making sure that we are responding to that as well.
I take one more on this topic, and James, Councillor Beckles, just one more, sorry about that. And would you make it short, please?
Hi, Lib. Thanks very much for presenting tonight. I'm James Beckles, Cabinet Lead for Crime and Community Safety. It's very much the process of crime reduction that is very long term, but we are in a very time-critical period and jobs. So what does the next 2 years of crime reduction look like from your perspective? And also, what are the big ticket items or 3 big projects that we in Newham can get behind? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. The next 2 years really looks to me like a having an even better sense of what works behind us in terms of research. We've only been up and running really for 2 and a bit years. And when I mean bit, actually a couple of months, so it really is a bit, 2 years and 2 months to be precise, which, given that has been hugely interfered and impacted and distorted by COVID, you know, that is not very long, particularly when we look up to somewhere like Scotland and we see, you know, what they managed to achieve was over a decade. So for me, I think the next 2 years, there's got to be a greater emphasis on learning from some of those investments. There's got to be a real drive to influence other organisations, as you have done, to put young people at the heart of finding solutions, making sure that we are empowering some of our communities who know those immediate neighbourhoods best. We're really hoping to learn from the My Ends programme that I referred to earlier on, and that we start to see a much more common language and a much more common expression of policy across all of the public sector organisations. We focused understandably today on local authorities perhaps, and how, you know, you work with us at City Hall. You are in itself, you know, there with lots of different partnerships, but I think strengthening our relationship with schools, strengthening our relationship with the NHS, which is doing, you know, some really interesting work around violence reduction, you know, through data, but also through youth workers in hospitals and A&Es that we're supporting. And also working closely with the police is key. And I think then mapping out those particular parts of London where we really need to be working even more intensively has to be part of the way forward. So very, very keen on the work that you're doing here. I'm really keen to keep on working alongside you and supporting the delivery that you're doing at a very much more grassroots level than we are able to do through partnership and through investment and through research.
Can I thank you very much indeed, Lib, for giving us up your time to be with us. We know you're extremely busy, and we have appreciated you giving up your time to speak with us tonight. So thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item 5, announcements by the chair. I have no announcements to make at this time. Moving on to item 6, announcement by the mayor. Can I ask the mayor if she has any announcements, please?
Chair, in the interest of time, I will pause my announcements. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed.
Chair? Chair?
Yes.
With your permission, can I request to extend standing orders to 9:30?
Okay. The motion is request is to extend standing orders
To 9:30.
to 9:30. Is that seconded? Thank you very much, Sarah. Is that agreed? Oh, I can't see any hands.
Agreed.
Hi. Thank you very much indeed. That's agreed. Thank you so much for that. Item number 7, announcements by the Chief Executive. The Chief Executive is joining us via Zoom. Can I ask the Chief Executive if she has any announcements, please?
Chair, I have no announcements to make this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Item number 8, any updates by cabinet members, deputy cabinet members or commissioners? Any member of the cabinet, deputy cabinet member or commissioner who wishes to update council will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. There shall be no debate or questions allowed. Well, I do see we have one minute. Councillor Charlene Clay.
Colin Lee Barker.
Oh, sorry, carrying the pathway.
That's okay.
I've house Charlene in front of me here, that's why.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Obviously, this evening we have overrun slightly, and I have the longest speech known to mankind. But as this is an extremely important issue, I hope, Chair, that you will give me the opportunity to complete my speech. I have tried to shorten it slightly. So, thank you, Lib, for the really insightful and thought-provoking talk this evening. I wanted to start by remembering those who have recently lost their lives in violence in Newham. In April, there was a tragic homicide of two young people, Faris Matu and Junior Jar. These homicides bring to sharp focus that there are dangers and unacceptable experiences that our children face. There is still more we all need to do. When violence occurs, it affects everyone. It affects those directly involved, but it also ripples out and affects those close and far. In Newham, we need it to feel safe, and as well as be safe for our children and residents. As Cabinet Member for Brighter Futures, I want to start by saying, for all of us, we have an individual and a collective responsibility to keep our children safe. We are committed to making Newham the best place for children and young people where they can be happy and healthy and safe to enable them to reach their full potential. The Newham's approach is what we described as a whole systems public health approach, which essentially means that we would have a look at all the opportunities for prevention at all ages and stages of a child's development. We know that the most of our children and young people never get involved in aspects of crime. Most of our children live positive lives and contribute immensely to society. Creating the environment for our children to thrive and flourish means that they can master their craft and access to opportunities, enrichment and improved learning. For some, however, they are exposed to violence and harm and exploitation. In 2019, our Mayor set up the Youth Safety Board, whose members are key partners, young people and families who have tragically lost someone to violence. The Youth Safety Board launched their findings and recommendations in January 2020. These recommendations have been the basis of the work across the borough. The report can be found on the Council's website. We have commissioned a report that will be published shortly entitled A Foundation of Change. The Council and its partners, children and young people, have worked together to draw a clear understanding of the current landscape in Newham. This report is an important analysis of the things we all need to be alert to and consider how we can make a difference knowing what we know. The report recognises the significant challenges we face, but it also highlights the evidence of not only the clear commitments we have made to our children and families. Through a forum that I set up called Next Gen Newham, we're ensuring that children, young people and their families have not just a voice, but their voices are heard. They have opportunities and meaningful engage and help co-design solutions. Through the different policy documents, like the Recovery and Reorientation Strategy, which has a dedicated pillar for children, we have agreed an Adolescence Exploitation Strategy, which Sarah mentioned earlier, across our partnerships, and we have the 50 Steps to Healthier Newham programme. All of these knitted together with the work, as I've outlined this evening, mean we are clear on what we are trying to do. COVID has impacted all of our communities, but critically, our children and young people have lost and missed many key and critical milestones, experiences, and connections with others. All of these things need urgent focus, and we are clear that through all our work, we must do all we can do to help children navigate back and get back what they have lost. As a partnership, we are committed to intervening early when there may be indicators that suggest a child may be at risk. We have an early help offer and have set up a multi-agency prevention of exploitation hub, which brings professionals together to better tackle the issues before us. The expansion of the youth empowerment offer is critical to our universal approach, which aims to develop safe spaces and trusted adults. And the increase in the partnerships with the voluntary community faith sector has enabled greater reach and a wide-ranging offer to children and young people. Enforcement is a critical element of our approach. Working with our police and probation service means there is a grip on those whom there are concerns and operational deployment to use as a criminal justice system to removing dangerous adults from our streets. This approach can be seen in a video which is also on our website. I'd like to conclude by saying we are committed to ensuring young people are safe. We are backing up this commitment with funding, which we help to target the most vulnerable. We all know that keeping our children safe is everybody's business. Each and every one of us has not only a corporate parenting responsibility, but also a community parenting role. Let's better understand through the reports and the work we are doing what is happening and advocate, find ways to be involved and connect across the whole system to know where we can play a role in keeping Newham's children and young people safe. This summer we have put together with help from our partners within the voluntary community faith sector, a vibrant summer programme for our young people, with everything from technology clubs to specialist provision. The summer programme will build on our existing offer of outreach, detached work and centre-based provision. All the details of our summer programme can be found on the Newham Council website. Thank you for listening.
Could I call Councillor Andista?
Thank you, Chair. Many of us have found our parks to be spiritually beneficial during lockdown. But tomorrow is Eid ul-Adha, and the parks will be alive with the sound of prayer. Because I'm delighted to say that after a great deal of work with our public health and community teams particularly, so that health and safety requirements are properly met, some of our Muslim neighbours will pray in some of the parks so that as many people as possible can enjoy worshipping together. I'm going to one session and I'm very excited about that, even though it is 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The earlier, the better the hour, the better the deed, I'm sure. So please enjoy tomorrow. If you're going to pray, I hope you will pray for all of us. I know you will. And if any of our faith or community groups would like to venture out, they simply have to ask so that the process of discussion can begin. But meanwhile, we wish everyone Eid Mubarak. Thank you.
Are there any more contributions from members of the executive or commissioners? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the next item of the agenda, item number 9, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Update on Work Programme for Future Commissioners. I call upon Councillor Anthony McAlmont as Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Do you have anything to say with regard to the Board of Governors, scrutiny topics or overview and scrutiny? If so, you have up to 5 minutes, please. I know he's watching from Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you clearly, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have a formal report for this council. Scrutiny is currently working on its work program for the remainder of this municipal year. So in September, we will be coming back with a detailed work program. And that's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any members of the council, do you have any questions to put to the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee? Thank you very much. I think there's none. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you very much, Tony, by the way. Item number 10. There were no requests made to the Chief Executive for the staging of a deputation at this evening's meeting. That takes us on to the next item of the agenda, item number 11, petitions. Does any member have a petition which they want to present to council? Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Jahan. petition there? Have you a petition? Do you want to speak on it, or you just want to hand it to the officers? Please do. Thank you very much indeed. Anyone else? Right. Thank you. Please ensure all Democratic Services receive the petition. So you've done that. So thank you very much indeed. Item number 12. There are two questions. This is members' questions. There are two questions received from Councillor Tharikutur Rayel this evening. Question 1 is to Councillor Assa. Councillor Tharikutur Rayel, do you have a supplementary question based on the answers received in relation to your question? Sugar? Or did you hear what I said? You have no further questions. The question is, Sugar, do you have a supplementary question based on the answers received in relation to your question that you put to the cabinet member? You don't? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Right, moving on to the next question to Mayor Fiaz. Do you have a supplementary question based on the answer received in relation to your question, Sugar? This is to the Mayor. You don't? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Fiaz, do you wish to respond to anything?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Item 13, questions by the public. We have received 6 questions from members of the public. The questions submitted and the answers are those which appear in tonight's order paper. The answers will be emailed to the questionnaires and will appear in the minutes of this meeting. Can I ask, is there any member of the public who has questions appearing in the order paper and wishes to read it out? Is there anyone here? No. Thank you very much. Does the relevant member of Cabinet have anything further to say or to add? Thank you so much indeed. As there are no further members of the public who wish to read their submitted questions, I will ask if any member of Cabinet has anything further to add to their respective answers already published on the order paper. No member?
No.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 14, speeches from members. I have accepted a question from Councillor Alan Griffiths to make a speech this evening on matters connected with the recent referendum. There is no provision for debate or any questions. Councillor Griffiths, you have up to 5 minutes. Yes, please do, yes. I think that mic is much better.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Alan Griffiths of Canning Town South Ward, just for the record. The issue of whether this council should be led by a directly elected mayor or not has now been settled for 10 years by the decision of the voters just a few weeks ago. On the 5th of May 2022, and in 2026 and in 2030, there will be a mayoral election alongside the election of councillors. That was part of this mayor's commitment that she made to the public, and the question to be put was the whole of this council's decision, and that all has happened and been delivered. During, however, the recent campaign, it wasn't all reasonable. Some things were fine. I have here 3 leaflets. There is one produced by the what I call the Lilac campaign people. On the bottom, it has a printer, it has a campaign address, and it has a named individual responsible for it. I have a yellow one. It has a campaign address at a house owned by a landlord well known to many of us. And it has a campaign organisation, not an individual, and it has a printer. I have the lurid pink leaflet. It has an address of the same printer, funnily enough. It's published by an organisation that cannot be traced and again has no named individual. I wonder if the printer is able to tell inquiries who commissioned those leaflets and who paid for them. That's a question printers sometimes get asked in these circumstances. So, what were actually problems in the campaign running up to campaign? This yellow leaflet contains a very large number of points. It accuses the mayor of individually making decisions that were made by this council. Some of those decisions were quite controversial. We all debated them in another meeting before deciding what the council's view should be in the way forward. But they were not decisions made individually by the mayor. They were decisions made by this council. And it's very seriously misrepresenting both the law about the mayor and the way that Roxana Fiaz leads this council to say otherwise. There were attempts made to tell us what to do after the election, when it's us that has been elected and has the legal responsibility and the democratic mandate from the public. There was also a campaign for a petition. Petitioners went out knocking on doors during the pandemic lockdown, asking people to sign a petition, when the petition could not lawfully be acted on during the lockdown. So, impossible promises. What happens with impossible promises? Far-fetched resolutions, pickled into rigid dogma, and ends in the grotesque chaos of a company founded by Labour Party members, hiring barristers to take the Labour majority council to court for following the law. The public cannot abide posturing, and they cannot abide the gesture generals or tendency technicians. They know that life is real. Too real for people's individual enthusiasm to be confused with a mass movement, too earnest to mistake barking for biting. And I shall end, as Neil Kinnock ended, as some of you may have gathered, by quoting an Adrian May. No time for those who appear to threaten the whole of private property, but in practice would threaten nothing. They are purists and therefore barren, said by Adrian May in 1950, just 2 years after he created the National Health Service. So the referendum is over, but lots and lots of issues in various places that arise from it are not over, and hopefully some of them will be settled before next year's council election.
Thank you very much, Councillor Griffith. Item 15, motions. We have received one motion on notice for tonight's meeting and one motion concerning urgent business, which was received and accepted by me after the agenda had been published. The first motion from Councillor Sugar and Maniba Khan. Councillor Sugar, please, would you move your motion? You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to place my motion, which is already published on the Yellow Book. My dear colleagues and NIAM residents, we all know about what was the impact of the pandemic on our education system. So, this was realized by all of the country and our government, and because of that reason, our Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the Education Recovery Commission because of the recatching and investing to lost lesson and face-to-face learning times and teaching time. So it has impacted on our young generation, and that is going to be affect our country in the coming years. So that is the reason for establishing a recovery commission. The recovery commission by one of the educational experts who grew up in East London, Sir Kevin Collins, and it was accepted by widely in our country because of his expertise. It was evidenced by the statement upon him by our Prime Minister and Education Secretary. So what the Commission suggested that be £50 billion for the recovery, but the Prime Minister, despite all the support to this Commission, he never realized in his statement to this, in his declaration to the fund, it was only £1.4 billion. This was the Educational Institute policy, said only £50 per child, pupil. It is 10.7 times less than originally demanded. And the next day, after the declaration of the fund, Sir Kevin Collins resigned from his position, but the Prime Minister Boris Johnson accorded him to as Sir. So he said it was not credible that a successful recovery can be achieved with a program of support of this size. So it is very clear what Boris Johnson intended to do with this lack of fund, and it was acknowledged by the educational experts, and across this country all the people knows that. And we know that what this Tory government did to the local government administration in the last 10 years. You have noticed that the report by the Unition last December, who gathered this information through the right to information from the government departments and the various councils. 330 councils across the country have suffered because of their cutting. This is over the pandemic. Around £16 billion in England, they cut down. Because of that, 17% of the services to the local government, services to the people have to be cut down by the local government, particularly on the human services. You have noticed that some of them, around 849 children and young family centers have been closed, and 950 youth centers have been closed. You all know about that. What are going to be the impact of this closure to the young families and youth? Because this is adding to the already worsened poverty situation in our country. 4.3 million children are living in our poverty, according to the report by the Child Poverty Action Group. Those who are very engaged with the alleviation of child poverty in our country. 31% of the children in our poverty because of the 9 out of 30 people in a classroom are living in poverty. So that is top of that the pandemic. So what I am trying to say that
you have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Thank you, Chair. So what I am trying to say that already worsened situation by the poverty affected by the children, and top of this lost learning time and face-to-face learning time, and this is going to be worse in our generations, and that is going to be affected. That means the vicious circle of the poverty is going to be long last. So that's why this motion I am presenting, requesting this government to do the meaningful, and that can be supported by the plan put forward by Sir Kevin Collins. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Muniba Khan to second. I take it you want to speak. 3 minutes, please.
Councillor Muniba Khan, Bolinwood. Can I start by thanking Councillor Suga for moving this important motion to the full council meeting today. I am seconding this motion because at times when this government had to offer extra support to children and young people to cover learning loss due to pandemic, it is undermining recommendation of their own appointed Education Recovery Commissioner, Sir Kevin Collins. School closures have had a huge impact on children's learning, so education must remain the top priority. Therefore, this government must provide support to teachers, schools and councils to make sure that people have the chance to make their learning. I urge you all to support this motion today. Thank you.
Is that motion agreed? Is it agreed? It is seconded. Thank you very much indeed. No. Right, I understand there is an amendment to the motion.
Yes, that's right, Chair.
Sarah Louise, okay.
Thank you. I'm wishing to move an amendment to the substantive motion, and the proposal is to remove all below London Borough of Newham resolves and to add call upon the Mayor and the League members for Children, Social Care and Education to write to the Secretary of State for Education to A, raise the unfairness of changing the date of the census used to calculate pupil premium, which has meant that Newham has lost some 2.3 million, and B, to scale up its ambition for our children and young people and adequately fund our schools by way of the curriculum catch-up funding so that we can ensure that no child in Newham is left behind. Thank you, Chair, and I reserve the right to speak in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Jane Lofthouse, to second that.
I second it, and I also reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I intend that we debate the original motion together with the amendment as a single debate to that. Is that agreed? Is that agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, anyone want to speak on that? Yeah, Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Neil Wilson, Glasgow South Ward, and speaking in my capacity, I suppose, as being a governor in this borough for 40 years. Currently a chair of finance of 2 primary school governing bodies. The whole idea of social priority areas and transmogrified into things like the pupil premium is meant to be a leveller up, I think, in the modern jargon. More importantly, English education, and I've been involved in my whole adult life, is actually still a long way behind trying to address the very inadequacies that we have within our education system. I'm supporting the amendment because I think it does quite clearly demonstrate that pupil premium, in terms of the way it's been hit in this borough, 2.3 million. We have a tremendous amount of need in terms of our deprived communities. We're talking in the context of, child poverty, but we're also talking about those who are not having full access to education. So I'm supporting that particular point in terms of the pupil premium. As I say, I'm chair of finance of 2 of our local primary schools within this borough, and the amount of discussion we have had. The curriculum catch-up funding of £50 per year compared with what the United States, the Netherlands and other major developed countries is quite frankly insulting, and I think we still need to carry on saying that the curriculum catch-up funding needs to be very much enhanced. Children and young people, we've had tremendous references throughout tonight. 90,000 within this borough, the youngest population of any in the London area. We owe it to our children that their curriculum catch-up funding is both adequately funded so that there is full resources, and that's why I'm supporting the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Louise. Is there any other member wanting to speak on this? use this one if you want to. Actually. Okay. Okay.
Much easier for me to use this one.
Okay.
I'm speaking in support of the motion, and I thank my colleagues for drawing our attention to the disparities we face in Newham. However, it might be useful to note that the curriculum catch-up funding should not be seen as a panacea. Our schools have been working on our curriculum catch-up since last September, and in fact it should be noted that our schools, in fact, were never closed. Since last March, we have ensured that all of our children and young people have had access to food, either through vouchers or food packs, and this will continue for the summer period. 23 out of 25 of our secondary schools will be delivering summer schools. That's targeting year 6 and year 7. We also have a very impressive summer programme working with our primary schools and our voluntary community and faith partners to ensure that not only will children and young people have a fun time, hot food, but also opportunities for learning. We also should note that right throughout the pandemic, our youth centres never closed. We delivered online activities right throughout, and from, well, the whole of the summer, they will be open for our children and our young people. So, although we may not, we still have not yet had the definitive figure that our schools will receive for the curriculum catch-up fund, and certainly we haven't seen the guidelines. We will not allow our children to be left behind. So thank you, and I agree with the motion.
Thank you very much. Any other contributions from any other member? Councillor Sugar, you now have the right of reply. Do you want to speak?
Thank you for adding this motion by amendment to the Councillor Sarah Lewis and seconding the amendment by Councillor Jenny Loftus and contribution by Councillor Neil Wilson. And also huge thanks to the my council colleagues, those who supported and helped me to present this motion. And thank you to all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the vote on the amendment, on the proposed amendment. So those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone against? That is carried. We now move to the vote. Oh, may I just say this? Only those members of council physically present in this meeting location now have the right to vote. This now becomes, with the amendment, the substantive motion that was proposed by Councillor Sugar. So those who are in favor of the motion as amended, could you please show? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. That is carried. Sorry, I had to sort out a little bit of housekeeping there. So thank you very much for that. Right, moving on to the second motion. In accordance with Rule 14.4.6 of the Council's procedural rules, as set out in the London Borough of Newham's Constitution, members of this council are asked to note that I have granted permission for a motion concerning urgent business to be submitted. The motion proposed by Mayor Roxana Fiaz was submitted in writing on the 13th of July 2021 and has been accepted on the basis that the motion relates to special circumstances, namely the COVID-19 pandemic and the lifting of restrictions that require an urgent debate. This was sent to members as a supplementary today. Mayor Fiaz, would you please move your motion? You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair and colleagues. Kindly note that this motion addresses the ongoing issue of the COVID-19 pandemic and the next steps as we enter a really critical period ahead with the global pandemic, which has been compounded by the absurdity that is this government's handling of COVID-19 in this country. Most recently, its absurdity has been the pandemic leading to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor now isolating despite trying to swizz us with their contact pilot ruse. Everyone is aware that today is the much heralded date that the government has set for lifting most of the remaining COVID-19 restrictions, so-called Freedom Day, as the government lets herd immunity reign. But in my mind, I agree with what US scientist William Haseltine said last week. The strategy of herd immunity is actually murderous. He is chair and president of Access Health International, which is an internationally recognised body, and he himself is an internationally recognised expert on the COVID-19 pandemic. So he knows what he is talking about, unlike Boris Johnson and his government. So, colleagues, I brought forward this motion today with the support of Councillor Ali, whom you all know is the Cabinet Lead for Health and Adult Social Care, in order to make it clear to our public here in Newham, but also across London and here in this country, that our approach in Newham to this pandemic and the next steps as we enter this critical period ahead will be based absolutely on the safety and the public health imperative that has faced us since March last year. First and foremost, it is important we set out a clear message to the people of Newham that we stand with them and that we will act to protect people's health and lives first and foremost in a situation where the government is badly letting people down. Last week, you'll all recall my statement in which I urged people to continue to wear face masks and maintain other safety measures, because I fear that in the absence of that, we will be putting our communities at risk in the coming third wave. Unfortunately, in the face of growing alarm from the public, from clear scientific advice, the government is intent on going ahead regardless. It is beyond belief that any government would choose to do this when their own scientific advisors have said that the impending exit wave could result in more than 200 deaths a day, with thousands more in hospital. The government's position is both irresponsible, chaotic, and confusing. This motion sets down our position clearly and in no uncertain terms, and I draw your attention specifically to a section relating to full council beliefs. We have no confidence in the government's decision to stop requiring the wearing of masks at a time of rapidly rising infection. With even the Prime Minister and the Chancellor in self-isolation, and the Health Secretary testing positive with COVID, it is obviously not the right time to stop the mandating of wearing masks. Of course, all of us want to end restrictions as soon as possible and for our lives to return to some form of normality. However, I share the concerns of many people and experts, and as the polls demonstrate, a majority of public opinion over the lifting of these restrictions and the impact that this will have, particularly here in Newham. To do this prematurely and in the current context runs the risk of greater loss of life and illness, with all the associated lasting damage. Last year, we came out of restrictions in the summer only to face a winter of further lockdown and damage to lives and to the economy of this stop-start approach. So today, our overriding priority has to be to do all that we can to protect our residents and our workforce, and lifting all restrictions in the current situation threatens that. In Newham, the rate of infection with the Delta variant is increasing. I have protested strongly to government over vaccine inequality that Newham will not be put at the back of the queue. We are working hard to increase our vaccination levels, and we know there's been a positive response to the vaccine take-up locally. Yet because of vaccine inequality, of not having enough supply, Newham remains at half the UK average. Only 35% of adults have had 2 jabs, with 56% having had their first jab alone, compared to 87%, which is an average nationally. On top of this is the wider context of Newham-specific issues and realities which have made our residents vulnerable to a higher level of COVID deaths and illnesses. We know the disproportionate impact on ethnic minority communities, of levels of poverty and consequent health impact. These factors haven't gone away. And so it is vital, in the absence of confidence in the government's approach, that we step up as a local leadership to do all that we can to protect ourselves and each other. That means we must continue to wear our masks, especially in more crowded indoor public spaces and on public transport. It is hugely welcome that the Mayor of London, and indeed mayors across the country, are insisting on masks for public transport. There is a groundswell building on this issue. We must continue to observe safety measures, and these are simple steps which are already part of our everyday lives, which we need to keep in place for a while longer. We are doing this as a council, as I mentioned earlier, and it is vital that we do this to protect both our staff and the public. So colleagues, I look forward to hearing all of your views on this really vital matter during this debate, and I hope you will all support this motion and send a clear message to Boris Johnson and his government. We don't want this his exit or Johnson's third wave. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much. Councillor Zulfikar Ali to second.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak on this emergency motion, which we had to bring in order to condemn this callous government's decision of this so-called Freedom Day and to ensure that we continue to protect our people. We have a responsibility to do all we can to protect our residents. And I'm proud to say that during the COVID pandemic, as Mayor had already said, our administration, our staff have worked extremely hard to protect, support our people, and to save lives as far as we could. Members, the serious impact of this pandemic is not hidden from any of us. The insane government is putting lives of our people in even more danger. They are gambling, they are experimenting with the lives of people, they're ignoring, they're disregarding scientists, health experts, even their own sage members. The Prime Minister himself said once that the decision along the roadmap will be on data, not date. Is that what is happening? Of course not. The date of 19th January does not justify the action is taken. Infection and transmission rates are increasing exponentially. Hospitalization is up. Hospitals were beginning to make plans to clear backlog. But unfortunately, they have to put those on the back burner because they're now fearing the worst. Their own Chris Whitty himself stated that the numbers are scary. Sajid Javed, the new health secretary, also stated the numbers could reach up to 100,000 plus 100K population. Aren't they worried? It doesn't seem like at all from their actions. We have the largest spam community in this borough who have suffered exceptionally badly and disproportionately during the first and second wave, and we cannot afford to take any further chances. We also have the lowest number of vaccination in Newham, even when compared with average in London. And that is a worrying trend. Knowing the situation is getting worse day by day, there were absolutely no justification for relaxing or restriction at once. This decision is dishonoring the roadmap and is absurd. Here in UK, we are being watched across the world. I agree with many leading experts, scientists, medical doctors, health practitioners across the UK and indeed the globe who have called this government's decision as seriously alarming, irresponsible, disastrous, murderous, experimenting, and the lives of innocent people are being treated in such a way that this could pose a threat to the entire world.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Yes, I shall be finishing very shortly, Chair. Some have gone as far as saying that this government decision is actually criminal. This is how experts feel, that this is exactly how we feel, and it is for this reason that we have brought this motion to you to agree to support this. We are a caring council. We put our people at the heart of everything we do. We are seriously concerned about this callous approach of this government, and we want to make sure that this decision that they have taken is of something that concerns us completely, responsibly, and we want to protect our people. And for that reason, I, along with the mayor and the rest of the colleagues, I'm sure you will support this motion so that we can raise and protect our people. Thank you, Chair.
That was longer than 30 seconds, Councillor. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Dasgupta, Jahan. Councillor Dasgupta. Sorry? You have up to 3 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I would like to make a contribution on this very important debate about the lifting of COVID restrictions announced by the government. Colleagues, the government and parts of the media are calling this Freedom Day. There is a certain irony to this. Whose freedom is it? Definitely not mine. This government, due to its own negligence, has allowed the Delta variant to rapidly spread across the country, accelerating what was until then a slow recovery to some form of normalcy. As some of you might know, I lost a very close family member, my uncle, to COVID. This is a global issue and requires a global approach, and we must all do our part. The government seems to have abdicated all responsibilities when it makes pronouncements such as Freedom Day with no scientific backup to evidence these proclamations. I came here to the council chamber on the DLR. Around half the carriage had their masks on, and when I was entering Canning Town Station, I saw the station staff reasonably ask people why they were not wearing masks or if they had exemptions. Clearly, despite the Mayor of London's messaging, the government's mixed messaging is not helping. In the beginning of lockdown, I saw with my own eyes the amazing community support as the Canning Town community got together, offering mutual aid, partnering with BCFS organizations, volunteering with our council-supported Help Newham program as we battled through great uncertainty. That was community spirit. It would be amiss for me not to mention, as the Commissioner for Social Integration and Equality, that the virus is no great leveler, but disproportionately impacts certain communities, especially like us in Newham, which is one of the highest levels of deprivation in the country. The announcement by the government to remove all restrictions despite warning from their own scientific advisors sets a dangerous precedent. This motion rightly allows the Council to take up leadership that is sadly lacking in our national government, to take all local approaches possible to reduce transmission through our outreach, advocacy, and public health measures. It also rightly asks that our borough receives its fair share of vaccine supplies. Many of my age group are still waiting to receive their first doses, let alone a second. Whilst the government decides to play politics with the lives of our residents, we will step up on behalf of them. Colleagues, I support this motion and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kitchen.
Hi
I'm also in favour of this motion because I'm concerned that this mismanagement of unlocking will create the perfect storm for businesses in our borough, mainly of low customer confidence hampering their recovery and potentially another lockdown. For a party that claims the economy is only safe in their hands, they're doing a great job at messing it up. When speaking to businesses on Green Street, they were grateful for the pre-Eid bump, but concerned about the effect of the virus on their employees and families. Many small businesses are concerned that if they keep the safety measures in place, they will lose business. Which begs the question, will this unlocking be as dangerous as the eat out to help out, which has been proven to have been a contributing factor to the Christmas lockdowns? And should there be a further lockdown, I and many others call on the government to extend measures to help small businesses and families survive. So I support the motion and I hope others do too.
Thank you very much. Any other member? Councillor Paul.
Councillor Terry Paul, League Member for Finance. Chair, I'd like to obviously support the motion, but also to, as it was said here, but the government needs to take responsibility for what COVID is doing to our communities. And also vaccine coverage is so important, not only for now, but for the longer term. I'd like to specifically talk about the issue of long COVID, something we need to be mindful of. As some of you may know, my partner, Sarah, is an ultra marathon runner who got long COVID, and after 3 months had trouble going up the stairs. And she is extremely fit. And that showed me personally how vaccine, community safety, mask wearing, government responsibility, and a council being on the side of residents is so important. And also, I'd like to say, as we last week produced our July financial review, and as we know, we have some challenges with our finances. And as we know, there was supposed to be a comprehensive spending review in the autumn, which was supposedly is designed to give councils like Newham the finances they need to look after their communities. As we know, at the start of the pandemic, the government said, spend what you need to spend to support your communities. And we did that. Unfortunately, the government isn't. And I'd like to say this is a very, very timely motion, an important motion, but just to put on the record for us as a council and for residents out there, this is not the end of it. This is the start of it. And I think one thing we should be concerned about for our communities is the impact of long COVID, and also that the government gives us the money Newham deserves to fight for our communities. I support this motion. It's an excellent motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other member wishing to speak? I think not. Oh, Councillor Charlene the Pathway.
I'll forgive you, Chair, don't worry.
All right, I'll get used to it.
I stand before you tonight, guys, looking at this motion. Firstly, I would like to support the motion, but also I would like to thank Mayor Roxana and Zalvika Ali for bringing this motion to full council tonight. I come here tonight as an elected member, but firstly, I come here as a resident. And this borough I love. This is my home, this is where I raise my children, this is where my family resides. And I am disgusted by the way in which this government has treated us. I'm disgusted that we have been treated as if we're at the bottom of the pile. And I think that we need to stand up and do something. Enough is enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. The impact that COVID has had on me as a resident has been something that I can't express. We have lost neighbours, we have lost friends, we have lost colleagues, but more importantly, we have still more to lose. We need to stand up, stand strong together, and demand from this government what it is that we rightly deserve. As much as today is Freedom Day, for many, actually, what does that mean? Because it doesn't feel like Freedom Day. Because when you stand around your living rooms with your families, there are sometimes people missing. We can't forget that. Those lives cannot be in vain. So I would implore on us all to stand up, do what's right, not just for us, but for everyone here in Newham. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other member wishing to speak? Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mayor Roxana Fiaz, you have the right of reply. You have 3 minutes.
Chair, if I may, we can go straight to the vote, if that's okay with you. Thank you.
With request of the Mayor, we move to the vote. So those in favour of the motion, please show. Thank you very much indeed. Anyone against? That is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 16, Council's Planning Protocol. I move the recommendation in report, but reserve the right to speak much later. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Havinda Verdi, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second that the Council agree to amend the Constitution by approving the planning protocol as set out in the agenda Appendix 1, page 15. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Anyone want to speak in the debate on this motion? Does anybody want to speak? I think not. Did I hear someone? Okay, thank you. Moving on. It says here that I have the right to reply. What I would say in this is that the planning, as you know, is one of the most political policies within any local authority. And the law changes very rapidly indeed. And every 5 years, I think it is, we have to review the policy. So therefore, I support that. And hopefully members can vote in favour of item 16, Council's Planning Protocol. So those in favour, please show. Anyone against?
Me too.
Thank you very much
It's
indeed.
the heat.
Thank you. Yes, I'm whispering in my ears. Any abstentions? See, thank you very much indeed. Item 17, appointments. Are there any other appointments to be made by the Mayor which he wishes to announce?
No, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any appointments which the group whips wish to propose? Councillor Jane Lofthouse.
Right. Regarding the Scrutiny Commission, Councillor Neressa Asai will be stepping down from Regeneration, Housing and Environment, Cladding and the relationship between Black boys and the borough, those commissions. The Scrutiny Chairs would like to appoint Councillor Susan Masters onto the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And we should also like to appoint Councillors Moniba Khan and Jen Kitchen onto the Licensing Act 3 subcommittee. Thank you very much.
Have we a seconder to that? Councillor Wilson, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And again, only members physically present at this meeting location. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I know the